Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the Wheel of Prog.
Nicely done.
Very
Nice
good.
intro, my friend.
Very,
Yeah.
very professional.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
Welcome to a very special Wheel of Prog episode. As you notice, we have Geoff and Kyle, but more importantly, our very special guest, Mr. Jordan Rudess of Dream Theater. Good to have you, man. You're going to get extra applause.
Wow. Oh, I like it. Wow. We got a big audience today. Fantastic.
So, yeah, we're gonna tackle. We've had so many requests from this. This may have been our most requested band since we started doing these things. Was please do Pink Floyd, please do Pink Floyd, and so we figured we would keep the fans waiting a little while until we found the right person to join us and go through this.
Awesome.
But you're very busy. Before we get to all of that stuff and ranking these records, you got your solo record, Permission to Fly, which a couple of singles have been out. That comes out in September. And then, of course, you have the Dream Theater tour, and you guys are working on a new album. So we want to talk to you real quick, not too long, because we don't want to keep you here for 2.5 hours. But, let's start with the new album called Permission to Fly. You want to give us a sort of a quick synopsis on it, how it came together and that type of thing, and feel free to drop any names into the explanation that you want.
Absolutely. So it's funny. I think about my catalog all the years doing all these albums, and then I think about what it really takes to do an album, and it's a trip. It's definitely a trip. It's amazing to think that I actually get them all done, because it's always a similar kind of thing, and it's always a whole lot of work, and then it turns out to be a whole lot of fun, and then a whole lot of work again, and then it's out, and that's awesome. So let's see if I can tell this in a short story. I wanted to come up with a follow-up to my Wired for Madness album, and I wanted to do it in a way that I felt was maybe a little bit more, I don't know, like maybe dialed in is the word. Things that people could, the usual kind of Jordan madness, if you will, all the crazy prog. But I also wanted to have stuff that was vocal and maybe a little bit more accessible and felt a little bit more inviting on a different level. So I decided that I would do an album that had a lot of vocals in it. Since I'm someone who listens to a lot of music that has vocals, I can do an album, that has vocals. So, of course, that created the first problem, if you will, because there's a lot of singers out there. Most of the singers these days sound like "Rah, rah, 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 rah," like Cookie Monster, whatever. I definitely didn't want that. So I had to avoid that category of vocalist and look beyond it and see who was actually singing in like a real, kind of way. Well, nothing against the Cookie Monster singers, I
No,
should say, but
Jeff and I are very grateful for that. We agree.
okay.
Lockstep. Yeah.
So I started a search, and some names came up with some very talented people that are great, I respect. But I got into this headspace where I was kind of like, okay, well, the sounds or the personality, I kept feeling this conflict, like the sound that people would make and the music that I feel and that I make. So I was lucky enough that one day I was talking to Roie, and he said, "Oh, there's this singer Joe Payne, and you should check him out." And so I thought, "Oh, okay, I'll check it out." And I got Joe on the phone one day, and we had a lovely conversation. No mention of like my album or anything. I think we left it off that there was a possibility that I might play on one of his things. So I don't know. And then I started to listen to a little bit more of his music, and I was thinking, God, this guy has a really, really beautiful voice. So finally, a little time went by, and I thought, I'm going to ask this guy if he wants to sing on my album. So I did, uh, he turned out to be a lovely guy, extremely musical, completely delivered. I mean, not only does he have a beautiful voice, but he's also so musical and so capable. He came through with some vocal arrangements that I thought that I usually have to, kind of steer everything and do all that. But Joe was amazing. And then on the drums, I had Darby Todd, because Darby I met on the Dream Sonic tour when we went out with Animals as Leaders and Devin Townsend, and hit it off right away with Darby. And I just thought he would be a perfect person to play the drums on this album, and that worked out beautifully as well. So my vision, started to really, really come together, and it was. Kind of added to by Steve Dadayan, who's a wonderful guitar player who did a bunch of rhythm guitars on it, and Bastian Martinez, who's this young Chilean talent on the guitar that played a couple leads. And of course, I should definitely mention that my daughter, Ari Rudess, wrote all the lyrics for this album. And we were talking about it the other day, and we were saying, it's an interesting thing. And we came to the realization that this collaboration didn't just like start on this album. This collaboration started the day that she was born, because from that day she was sitting by me at the piano and then eventually making up songs with me and playing
Yeah.
along. And I mean, she, I was giving her rhythm training on the way to kindergarten. And so this is, and then she became kind of a linguist along the way. So when I was thinking about lyrics, I was like, I could write I like writing the words, and I don't really get to do that in Dream Theater. So I could do that on my album, but I don't know. I don't really have to do that. I'll ask Ari to do it. So asked her to do it, and she came through with some amazing words, I think. And this album, has been born. And what's amazing, of course, when you do these kind of things, is that you finish the music, you get it mixed, mastered, and then of course you wait, right? So most people on the planet Earth have not heard it yet. So,
Right.
and I just listened to a little bit of it in the car with Ari and Danielle, my wife, the other day. And for us, it was just kind of like we hadn't heard it in a while. So we were revisiting it and going, oh, wow, this is pretty cool, like. So yeah, Permission to Fly comes out on September 6th. And I'm very excited about it.
Nice.
That's awesome. If I have time to ask, I'd love to ask just a little bit. I'm the resident drummer here. I love questions about drumming and
Cool.
how you approach that process. But
Yeah.
Darby Todd's a name that I know pretty well. So I know him from
Uh-huh.
Devin. I know he tours around with Devin, but he's also played with The Darkness and
Yeah.
Robert Plant, and Gary Moore, Martin Barr. I mean, he's got a pretty impressive. I think Paul Gilbert too. He's got a pretty impressive,
Yeah, right.
Stevie there.
No doubt.
You talked about how you'd met him on Dream Sonic and so on, but how is the process of working with someone like him versus someone like Mike Mangini or Mike Portnoy? I mean, you've worked with some really talented guys, but were you kind of giving him like a demo of here's sort of what I want, or letting him do it? And like, were you all in the same room, or was it remote? Just
Yeah.
maybe tell us something about that.
Great questions. I mean, the solo album thing, at least for me, has generally been a remote process where I'll make it sound good in my house with all my MIDI instruments, and just so I feel like, okay, this is really working, and the colors
Yeah.
and the pieces are there. Darby, I asked Darby how he wanted to do this, if he just wanted me to send it to him before I did any kind of like scratch drums or anything like that. But he and I didn't think that made a whole lot of sense. So I've been banging out MIDI drums since the beginning of MIDI. So I just put down some very simple drums just to let him know where I thought where I feel the accents. And then from there, hey, take it away, do what you want, suggest, do the things. But at least he knows in all those odd time signatures, of which there are many, where I'm really feeling the beat. So that clarifies a lot of things. And then somebody like Darby, I mean, he's so plugged into the progressive fusiony world that he was like amazing, because he would send me back stuff. I'd go, well, yeah, like that's great, and I would have maybe like a couple measures, like, oh, do you think maybe in this measure don't put the kick there but put it on this beat, little things. um but he was so on it and so particular on his own that I didn't, just like with Joe, I mean, I didn't need to like sit there and say a whole hell of a lot. And also he delivered it with some great sounds that I was able to just pass on to Jimmy T, our engineer. And Jimmy T was like, these sound great. And the same with the vocals. These sound great. So they were able to just do what they do. And I think I also printed out some notation from my MIDI files for Darby because he can read music, and that was help. He wanted to see a few things, so I just printed out whatever I could.
A
Actually,
drummer that can read
yeah,
music.
a
Well, that's
drummer, yeah.
must be why he's getting all his jobs.
Yeah, and one of the things about him is he's very brave in the sense that he's not scared. Sometimes, I'll work with people that are like, I don't know, I can't I can't really work on your stuff. It's too complex, it's too hard. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, that's fine. But Darby was like, just bring it on. Give me whatever you got. I'm like, okay. You asked for it, pal. Here we go.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
He's Brit as well. He's British, and so's that Joe Payne. So obviously they're awesome.
Obviously.
Um, Jordan, in terms of obviously one of the things you did whenever you launched the first track from the album Embers, you did that through Moises technology, both in the keyboard side, but also in the app side of the world is a very important thing for you. Do you want to tell us a bit about the idea and the process behind that for anybody that kind of missed that?
Yeah, for sure. So, because I'm very, very involved in the music technology space, it kind of made sense to work out something, uh, to do with this album and the way that we released one of the songs. And one of the companies that I'm an ambassador for is this company called Moises, Moises, and they do some really great work. The core of their work is really on track separation. So basically, for those of you who do not know what that means, is that you can take any stereo audio file, you can even take a video and upload it to their system, and then a minute or so later, it comes back to you and it actually separates the tracks. So you could have a separate vocal, a separate bass track, separate piano, separate guitar lead, all these different things. You can basically choose how you want to separate it out. And they do a great job of that. And in addition to that, they also very nicely show you all the chords right in time with when they're happening. You can speed it up, you can slow it down, all without changing the pitch. You can get a metronome. So there's all these amazing tools within this kind of app, Moises. So I orchestrated this situation with the record company and with Moises to allow Embers to be released on that platform. And we did it around the concept of a contest. So the contest was basically take out one of the parts and do your own thing instead. And then I would kind of like judge it along with the Moises people. And then the winner would get some prize. So yeah, so that's what we did. It was really kind of interesting. So you needed to have Moises is a free download. So you needed to download Moises, and then you could have access to the stems of this song. Take it apart, replace the piano, replace the vocals, play the trombone to it. Some guy played drums in the beach. I don't know. There was all kinds of wacky and fun things, and other people just added parts to it. It was really pretty crazy. I didn't know if anybody would do anything when I put it out, but you know, but
That
of
app's
course,
amazing. I've
Yeah.
played with that a little bit. It's wild what you can do.
Yeah.
Also I have to thank you because so I asked you to I said I wanted to do some kind of remix of our Prog Report theme song for something that we're
Yeah.
doing. And I asked you about what app can I maybe use for that, and you recommended I think Suno, is it called?
Yeah.
And we've had so much fun with that app. I have to.
Oh my God. Oh yeah,
we've
that's great.
created all sorts of new songs and different things, and it's hilarious. It's brought me so much joy, I have to tell you.
Oh, well, that's really nice. That company and also Udio were getting sued by the record companies.
I
I
know.
don't, I don't know if you saw
I could
that,
see why.
but
I
yeah, I
no,
mean,
I can. It makes sense. It's
everybody
wild
wants a
what it
piece of
can
the
do.
everybody wants a piece of the action. I get that. I mean, but that's
Yeah.
an interesting reaction that you had because, and this is a whole, separate discussion, really.
Yeah, yeah.
But I will say that the really good part about it, and you just highlighted it, is that it brings more music into people's lives and gives them joy and allows them to be even in that kind of simple way allows them to be part of the music creation process and do things that you've never been able to do before, like it's your sister brother's birthday or your this anniversary. You quickly type in some words
Right.
and say I want a
I
funk
think if it's
song
for
and like,
stuff I think if it's for stuff like that, it can be totally fun. You just don't want those songs making the radio, which that's the fine line. But
well,
who
yeah. I
knows?
mean that, yeah, and that's of course another discussion. But
Right.
somebody will try to put that on the radio, and maybe it'll be good, and
Eventually.
we'll talk about it another time, because it's really. But I will say, one of the things for people who are watching this is that those companies, at least the ones that I talk to, are very interested to make those products more engaging for the user. In other words, so you could play in a piano part, or or sing a line, and then have that line you sing inspire it, or do things that would actually, so you're participating more in the process, so you can
Yeah.
shape and mold and use the technology in a way that's a little bit deeper than just saying, song from my brother Andy and make it happy, go like that. Fine.
Right.
That's a quick smile, but a little bit more involvement, and becomes something more uh, personal, and then, cooler.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's wild stuff, man. I want to real quick before we jump into the Pink Floyd stuff, of course, just get a quick update for you on the Dream Theater stuff. We last had Mike on when he was, I think, had just maybe finished his drum parts. I think your parts maybe weren't done. I know you recently shared on Instagram that you had finished your parts, and there's the tour coming up in October. What can you tell us without giving stuff away? How
Yeah.
has it been going for you guys?
It was a really deep uh, process. My biggest feeling after at least getting to this point is that I think the Dream Theater fans are going to freak out, because, we don't take anything lightly. We put everything into what we do, each and every one of us. And, having Mike back has just been so deep. It's been so wonderful, like just feeling like, okay, like, this is so cool. He's back with all his unique talents that he can put into this, and right away he started to, like, those particular elements, like the conceptual elements that he's so great at. Like, this can connect with this, this can connect with this, and it's in both in the audio world, and also, in the visual world, where he's got like a mind of like a film director kind of
Mm.
person. So he's thinking like that, and I mean, let's just say it like it is. I mean, Dream Theater was fine. We did fine. We won a Grammy. Everything was cool. But having him back is just so wonderful, because there was an element, or more than a single element, that was, missing, if you will, and we're just enjoying, having him back where he really, should be. So I'm excited where we're at. I did finish all my keyboard parts. I worked on a bunch of sound effects and things like that. And after I was excited about the album, but after I got done with all that, I went, wow, okay, it hit the next level for me as well. And now, of course, James is going to be singing on everything, and I'm sure he'll knock it out of the park. And then we'll have, the whole thing. It'll be cool.
Sounds awesome, man. Well, we're
Yeah.
all super excited. It's gonna be
Yeah,
amazing.
it's gonna be good.
All
Totally.
right. All right. So let's go ahead and bring up the wheel. Bam.
Oh yeah, we got to
There we
rank some
go.
albums, right?
We got to rank some albums.
I got all like
Um,
goosebumpy about the Dream Theater album. So
I know
Good.
anyway,
we got to recover from
yeah,
that a little
we've
bit.
got a big group of us coming to London to see you guys kick it off.
Right,
So
right. I got a
no
lot of work to
pressure.
do. Got a lot of work to
Yeah.
do before that. Let's not rush it. I
um,
got a program.
right. So
Yeah.
we have the 15 studio albums, from Piper at the Gates of Dawn all the way through Endless River. And then we have, because there's four of us to give us each four spins, we have a wild card, which will allow you, Jordan, to move albums around if it's your turn and you land on that. Okay, so I guess maybe we'll just do the order on screen. I'll go first, Geoff, Kyle, and then Jordan, you could be last,
Okay.
which will allow you to sort of revamp it at the end if you want a little bit.
Okay.
All right,
Back.
we're ready. All right, cool. I will go ahead and spin first, and let's see what we got. Kick it off. Okay.
That's a fun one to start with.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good one. Division
Yeah.
Bell. Our first one here. Where's
Nice.
my mouse? There it is. Okay, so I guess this is the last sort of real album with David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and Nick Mason, released in '94. This was, I think, coming off Momentary Lapse of Reason, considered kind of a return to the more really kind of conceptual prog nature of the band a little bit. I think this album is liked still a lot by a lot of people. Some really good tracks. High Hopes is sort of a standout on here. I think that everybody goes back to some cool instrumentals, Marooned, and a few other ones that I remember. Um, Keep Talking is like really cool. It has that Moog sound and all that stuff. I like this album. I mean, it's hard to figure out where everything else is sort of gonna go, but I think I'm just gonna just go ahead and put this in A for now.
Wow.
Ooh,
And
top 6
uh,
album.
Wow.
you know what? It's gonna be weird for me with Pink Floyd. Like, there's a chunk in the middle there where I know the album's like crazy. I obsessed over them. I know them back to front. I love them. And then there's like maybe the first 5 albums I've listened to rarely. I don't like them at all, and I don't know where to rank them. So it's sort of weird. This one I know I do like, and I think it's good. I would say it's at least a B, but I'm gonna be more positive and put it in A. What do you guys think? Where would you
Yeah,
put it?
it's a B for me for what it's worth. I actually got to see Brit Floyd, which is one of the there's 6 or 7 like really good
1,000,
Pink Floyd tribute bands. What's that?
6 or 7,000 Pink Floyd tribute bands.
Well, no, of the ones that are really doing it on a super high level, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, whatever. But to me, they're British, so you should like them. But they did the 30-year anniversary of Division Bell, so they did several songs from this when I saw them, and they're great. I mean, it's one of those albums that I have admittedly not spent as much time on as some of the other ones in their discography, but it holds up. I think comparing this to Momentary Lapse, it was a real Pink Floyd album, not just a David Gilmour solo album. It was conceptualized from the very beginning as a Pink Floyd album, and I think it shows as such. I don't know if it's a top 6 album for me, but it's a great album. It's a little product of its time, maybe in some ways, but like you said, you mentioned the kind of the standout tracks. I mean, High Hopes is one of their better songs, I think, overall. So I like it, but maybe B, A at the most, perhaps.
Hey Jordan, feel free to chime in on all the
Yeah,
albums and
I
whatever.
will. I'm in a similar headspace to you, Roy, that you just mentioned, in that a lot of them kind of clump together almost in this space of being like experimental and cool and a little bit trippy, but then there's certain ones that stand out. But I would say that this album, this is a period of time where conceptually they did have things a little bit more together, and they were producing music that was almost like more congealed. So in that sense, it stands out above the almost like the clump of like to me at least, experimental
Yeah.
stuff. So I don't know if I'd put it where you placed it, but I guess we have to see in the grander picture of things. Maybe my first instinct would be to drop it down a little bit, but let's see how it goes.
All right, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good start. That
Roy
was a
was
good
just
one to
being
start with.
nice out of the gate. He just wanted to be kind.
Well, you always start with the first album in D whenever we do something.
Yeah, I have the
That's
opposite
funny.
approach. This album sucks.
All right, Saucer Full of Secrets. Okay, so this is interesting. All right,
Okay.
Geoff, this is you.
Yeah, so I mean, I was listening to a podcast some friends of mine, a radio show some friends of mine did locally, and one of the things they were talking about Pink Floyd is actually a lot of it is about the journey, right? And to an extent, one of the things I love about Floyd is there is this, you can see this progression of a band from all of these very different, distinct phases. And I think the other thing about it is, I suppose, a bit like the Beatles catalog, if you know the history of, things that they did, for the first time that weren't common, like writing their own songs, etc. Um, and this kind of obviously is a bit of a transition because Sid, has been damaged by whatever has happened to him, and what do you do when your main writer, your frontman, vocalist, can't really function anymore? And this album, is really a reflection of, well, Rick Wright tried some writing, Roger Waters tried some writing, and they put it all together. I actually Again, sort of sacrilegious moment maybe, but I do like this album better than Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Um,
Same.
and I mean, I just think it's really, really interesting where they're going on this album. And there's a whole, there's some of the things where they're trying to do that whimsical English pop thing, because the other thing to remember is that in in the Sid era, they were having, top 10 British singles. They were on TV, they were having hits. They were known as a hit band. And then to produce an album with something like Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun on it, was something very, very different. And you can, I think probably one of the things, out of the, you know, Roger Waters and Nick Mason weren't particularly trained musicians. Richard Wright clearly was. David Gilmour had a lot of experience. But you get the feeling from this album of people kind of getting together and trying a lot of stuff. And some of it sticks and some of it doesn't. And then it ends with Jug Band Blues, which is kind of Sid's farewell song, which is just brilliant, amazing. And, I wonder who could be writing this song, and it's a fantastic farewell from him. So I put this one in middle. I put this in B tier.
Okay.
Same.
Yep. That works.
Took
Yeah,
the
it's
words
not
right
one
out of my mouth.
Not one I listened to much, but yeah, I think it's also better than the debut for me. So
Yeah, and I also think that, I didn't listen to it that much, but I think it's an important album. I do like the songs on it, and I like the spirit, the new kind of spirit of experimentation. And I feel like this album might be a little more important than some of the ones because of its position in time and because it was this opening and this transition. And we all kind of know that when a band goes through those pivots, it can, well, either fall apart or it can be something that is so, important to the whole career of an ensemble.
yeah, I mean, amazing how the story of all that in the beginning and with Sid and what happened to them and how they became what they became it's amazing. So yeah, I agree. All right, good placement there. Let's see, Kyle.
Yeah, sure. And fun fact on the album, there's two members of the band who played kazoo on that album. Dave Gilmour
Well,
and Nick Mason. So there you go.
we don't count the wild card when it ends when it comes in the first round because there'd be
Spin it
no point
again.
to it right now.
Yeah.
So
I'm
let's
going to get Division Bell out of A.
One more
okay,
time.
let's see where we go.
What are the chances?
Right.
Here we go.
That's where it ends
Hey!
up.
Okay.
All right. Adam Hart
All right,
Mother.
Adam Hart,
The mother.
Maja. Here's a fun fact.
Great album cover.
Do you know what Stanley Kubrick film features this album?
No.
Clockwork Orange.
It's in A Clockwork Orange. It's in the record store. There's Magical Mystery Tours back there. Adam Hart Mother. Anyway, just a fun fact. This is an album that I really like. I love the horns on Adam Hart Mother. I think Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast is great. I really like it. This for me, you don't like that song? I like it.
I honestly thought you were joking.
No, I like it. I think it works really well. I think there's some sort of silliness to it, but I think as an overall song, it works. I mean, I think the strongest, part is side one of the thing is great. I love kind of the triumphant feel of that like melody on that song. To me, this is a borderline A/B album. I really like this one, and I think you're talking like kind of in the chronology of the band and the evolution of the band. This one feels like, maybe less so than Meddle, but it feels like where they're starting to get it and start to understand kind of that mix of the experimental with the cinematic or the more epic part of how they do music. And I don't think they quite land it. And I don't think the album as a whole quite adds up to some of the other stuff. But I'm a fan of this one. I just, in keeping it reasonable, I'm going to put it in B. But it's my top selection of B tier for what that's worth. It's kind of right there with Final Cut for me. It's like they kind of go back and forth. So
yeah, I'm okay with it in B. I mean, I like the title track. It's actually a pretty cool song at the end of the day. I mean, even now, the album cover's sort of iconic in a weird way. But yeah, the rest of it I don't really get too much. So yeah, B I don't know, C maybe works, but B's fine. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Geoff does not agree, I can tell, but go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
This album is a funny one for me because I remember starting to get into Pink Floyd and discovering albums. And one day, this friend of mine, who was actually one of the guys in high school that was pretty instrumental to my discovering the synthesizer, because he literally, when I was deeply immersed in classical piano and going to be a classical pianist, he and another friend brought over a Moog synthesizer to my house to just
Wow.
distort my reality a little bit. My mother almost slammed the door on his face when he came by. But I think he was also someone who came by with the Adam Hart Mother album, and I was like, what is that? Like, what's going on with this thing? So I remember him being really into it, and I think I gave it a couple listens. I was like, wow, it's pretty spacey, and like, so like for me, like when I got into Prague, I had to go back and listen to the stuff that I missed because I was studying classical piano, and that was the one that I
Right.
went back to maybe a couple times. I went, okay, well, I think I'll move forward now. So actually, when you invited me to do this, I went back and I listened to it again. I thought, okay, well, it's pretty good. I like this. It's cool. It's a very cool album. It's so that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I've never connected with a title track. I've tried really hard, and
Huh.
I kind of don't.
Hmm.
I don't really get it. I love the three songs at the start of side B.
I do.
Uh,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like everybody has.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
the water song, the Right song, and the Gilmore song. I love Fat Old Sun.
Mm.
I'll Psychedelic Breakfast. I kind of skip over that. I just it's
It gets poo pooed. I think it's good.
crazy for me.
But
But I would have put it in D tier if it had been to me.
Wow.
no way, really.
Wow.
Wow,
I think there's way
that is
worse albums.
highly offensive. It's the only album that they used like a choir on too, and I really dig that. I mean, that's all title track, but I just love those strong like blended horns and the choir. It just has a sort of unique feel that I just dig, and I don't find it on any other album, especially from this like given
The
point in their
period.
career. But
Yeah.
My
I don't know.
Yeah.
my fun fact, why I've been staring around, but I can't find it, is it's actually the Pink Floyd album that I bought most recently because they did
You
this.
don't like it?
There's no there, but there's this really cool. It's like they've done it in like a 7-inch single size with all the graphics and stuff in it, and it was cheap on Amazon, and I bought it, even though I've already.
Well, it's also very reminiscent of "Get a Grip" by Aerosmith, but there's no pierced nipple. If that means anything to you, Geoff.
All right, Jordan.
Also,
But I'd rather move on.
yeah. We've given it enough. Let's see.
I'm glad I got that one. It doesn't deserve D. Goodness gracious.
Ah, okay. Well, here we go. A proper record. Wish You Were Here.
A proper record. We're on the same page. Yeah, this one had a bigger place in my life, definitely. Because this was at the time when I was fully immersed and made the transition to, just kind of being a synthesizer player and all that stuff. So it has greater meaning, and and for me, it would have to be higher up in the scoring. So
I mean, are we putting it in S? I'm guessing.
I think it needs to be, yeah, because it's
Yeah.
definitely
No,
a really,
100%.
it's a
Absolutely.
super important album. So let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, without question, this is one of the great albums, by the band or of all time, even coming off Dark Side of the Moon. The Shine on You Crazy Diamond is just awesome. That opening guitar thing is just one of the great things ever. Welcome to the Machine. Have a Cigar. Wish You Were Here. I mean, this is just ridiculously awesome. So yeah, I mean, that was a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
I remember the first time I ever saw a Pink Floyd tribute band, and they were playing in a small club in Belfast, and I think it was maybe the Australian Pink Floyd, and everybody came into this club and they sat on the ground. That's how kind of cool we all were. And they started with playing "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," and the guy played like one of the notes slightly wrong,
Uh-oh.
and there was this audible.
It's funny.
It's 4 notes. How can you get it wrong? It's 4
Right,
notes.
right.
It was just one little tiny thing. You just see that's kind of, I think it's a reflection of, that's why it's top there. This stuff is so, I mean, it's practically like classical music. You can't play that whole opening solo can't be played any way other than exactly how it is, on the album, right? It's
Yeah.
that kind of status of track,
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
people, if
Yeah.
people played, do 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 dee, but they wouldn't, they'd be horrified. It's a bit like playing classical music wrong.
Right.
So,
I mean, for
so there's
some
an
people, sorry, go ahead, man.
I was going to say there's a episode of that show, Classic Albums, that VH1 Classic would show. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Actually, Jordan was talking about the Moises app. That was like the old school version of like being able to isolate tracks. Was watching that show, and then they, like,
Oh.
here's this guitar we never used, and let's take the drums out. I love that show and rewatch those episodes. But there's one on this specific album that's just great, and I think it helps me appreciate it even more. And I had no idea that "Have a Cigar" was not Roger singing. And that, in fact, like with most things, Roger hated the way the guy sang it. But that's Roger. Roger's gonna Roger.
I think in one of the sort of expanded versions, they put out the version with Gilmore and Waters singing it kind of in harmony, and it's like they made the right call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured there's a reason.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Cool.
Great stuff. All right. Back to me.
You giving Jordan a softball there with "Wish You Were Here."
Right.
We got
Right.
lucky. We got lucky. Oh, man. Okay.
Ummagumma.
Ummagumma.
Ummagumma. Yeah. I mean, okay. So what number album was this by them? It was the fourth album. 1969. I guess one side's a live tracks, and the other side is a bunch of weird noises. Yeah, this is a pointless record. I mean, I heard Steven Wilson sort of say that this is maybe one of his favorite Pink Floyd records.
What?
Which makes sense. But yeah, this is straight D tier, I think, for me. Yeah. I don't know. You got to be into this kind of stuff, and I'm just not. I skip over noises on records. I just don't like things like that. I want to get to songs, so it doesn't really do anything.
Interesting. In the spaciness of that group of albums that we referenced before, the Ummagumma actually, for whatever reason, I latched on to a couple things about that. I must have listened to Grantchester Meadows 10,000 times in my life in certain headspaces that we don't necessarily have to talk about. But that was an important journey.
That's the only way to listen to this record, I think.
But I couldn't actually, no matter how spaced out I might have been, I couldn't listen to some of it because it was a little bit too wandery for me. Like what you're talking, what stayed with you, Roy. Like that didn't seem to have a big purpose or be able to hook you in. But if I left the record on and I got into the Species stuff and all that, I remember kind of like going, "Oh my God, what the hell am I listening to?" Like some of the sounds were really, really cool though, and they kind of stayed with me. Like it was just like so weird. But when I think of Ummagumma, I probably could do without most of it, but the Grantchester Meadows was really, really an important song. So I wouldn't put it at the very, very bottom, just even because of that.
Right.
I would.
There you go.
I think the other thing about it was that if it was, the live album is really good, and people think about the second part of it, probably before they think about the first part of it. If it was just a live album, I think it'd be really, really revered. But there we go.
Maybe.
But it's not really fair to rank it higher because of songs that already exist elsewhere.
No,
I mean,
I agree.
Sure. But I agree. Like I start that album and I'm like, this is actually great. And then you get into Sisyphus and several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict and stuff like that. And each band member had their own like individual song. I think Waters got 2. Some of those are rough. Listen, Sisyphus in particular is rough.
The only thing I'll say about it, is that they were doing stuff at a time, like it or not, and maybe it doesn't always work, but they were doing true experimentation
Yeah.
that you can't find today. You can't do. No
Yeah.
band is going to be allowed to come out with this now.
Uh-oh.
You know what I mean? It doesn't.
Jordan's like,
So-
we just recorded
Damn it.
Sisyphus. Part
Mike,
two.
Wait a minute.
Mike, we gotta
Wait, let me
go
I
back to
gotta
the
go, guys. I
studio.
gotta make a phone call.
Exit.
That's it.
So,
You know,
but you know what I mean? It's
Totally.
it's
This was the space of like Genesis, they would do this kind of thing with on like Lamb, where they would just go off and make a whole bunch of weird sounds and trip out for a
Yeah.
while. And yeah, it was totally acceptable then.
right.
But you can
But-
see,
Yeah.
but you can see all of that stuff as being, that it's the stepping stone to Adam Hart Mother, right? I mean, this is the thing about it's the journey. It's the, yeah, okay, that in itself, but then they got something different with Adam Hart Mother, and they, it kind of evolves, which you don't often, a lot of times these days bands get a sound and they just kind of replicate it, and then they don't know what to do, and they make an acoustic album, and then they just go back to doing what they did before, and everyone goes, they're back,
Yeah.
they sound, there's so much of a journey happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
No, fair enough. Yep.
and I do like the album cover of Ummagumma too. So
It's
there's
great.
that.
Oh, it's cool. Yeah, it's
The
very
album
cool.
covers were amazing. All right, here we go. Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Well.
All right, Geoff.
Oh, it's me, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Aaron, it's up to you to rate it.
These guys are worried what I'm going to do with this album, weren't they?
I am. Yeah.
No, I know. Look, I'm going to put it in S tier, right? It has to be an S tier album.
Yes, absolutely.
It is. I guess to me, it's the sort of there's that block of Animals, The Wall, and then the final cut, which I guess the Roger, the needle moved way, way, way towards Roger. I think probably this was sort of the point where it probably wasn't too far yet. I mean, it's a brilliant concept album. It's so creative. It's very much weighted towards Roger's way of working, and he sings a lot more in it. And I'm kind of team Dave Gilmour, so to an extent, that's kind of one of the reasons why Dave's moments are amazing on it. There's probably not enough of it for me, but hey, he was there, and by the sounds of it, he didn't have much to contribute to it. But clearly conceived as not just an album, a whole multimedia experience. The live show is incredible, and thank goodness they didn't let that terrible drummer play on it. Thank goodness they prevented him from doing that, right, Jordan?
Right, exactly.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that story. That's great. Maybe
You wanna-
for
you
those in
wanna-
the back that were
Yeah, you want to
sleeping
tell
during
that
class.
again?
For anyone who
Yeah.
doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yes, this story. Yeah, so let's see. How did you guys hear about this lovely? I guess it was
I
in
think
the
you
press
told
at
it.
some
You didn't you
point,
tell us
right?
to us once on a long older podcast? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can go there. So, yeah. So many years ago, I was hanging out with my good friend Blue Ocean was his name, a New York City session guy, and he had a business doing other interesting things around the town. And he got a call. I remember, and he was like, "Okay." He used to call me kid. I was about 10 years younger than him, and he got a call, and he said, "Hey, kid, let's go." I was like, "Where are we going?" He says, "You play drums, right?" I said, "Well, I played snare drum in like third grade." He was like, "Okay, come with me." So I was hanging out with Blue, and we went to wherever the hell he was going. We end up in this very beautiful studio, and I'm like, "Okay." And I see about like, what was it, like 12, 15 different snare drums to set up there. thinking, okay, and somebody points me to a snare drum, and I grab the sticks, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Like I played snare drum in third grade. This is ridiculous. Anyway, so I remember this guy stands up in front of us. He says, okay, we're going to do a basic, march thing, and everybody starts doing it, and I start playing. Trying to get my chops back together, and the guy points over. He points to one guy, says, no, we don't need you. So we start again, and then he points at me. He says, okay, sorry, we don't need you either. And I didn't know what this session was. I didn't know at all what it was. All I knew was just hanging
Right.
out with Blue. We were having a good time. So I go into the control room. It was very, in those days, everything was a lot different than it is now. We're very loose. We're hanging out. And, I'm there, and I'm kind of just sitting there, and I hear these vocals, bring the boys back home. So I'm thinking, what the hell is this? This is weird. So all of a sudden, the engineer he rewinds the tape a little bit, and I hear, like, I don't know, what was it, like, "Mother, do you think that?" Like Roger Waters singing. I went, "Holy shit! What is this?" I said, "Is this Pink Floyd?" And the engineer says, "Yeah. This is a Pink. We're working on a Pink Floyd album." I went, "Oh, that's interesting."
Let me
It's
back in.
amazing.
So no, I didn't care. I didn't care. I was happy. I think we were passing around a
Yeah.
joint or something like that.
That is so wild.
We're just having fun. And then, of course, later on, it becomes The Wall, and I think, okay, well, I was there. Bring the boys back home. But
That's
I didn't
cool.
practice.
It's
I didn't
amazing.
practice the drums hard enough in those days.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well,
You go.
here's a fun fact you may not know. I just saw this on Wikipedia. The only drummer credited on that track is actually Joe Porcaro, who is Jeff Porcaro's dad. So,
Oh, interesting.
if he's the one that beat you out, I think you can feel okay
There was a
about it.
whole group of guys there, though, so maybe
Yeah.
they just didn't give
They
credit
just
to
didn't use.
the
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably not.
right. But
Amazing.
I can live with it. I'm
Good
okay
stuff.
with it. But
Yeah. You did
yeah,
okay.
Such a good story.
yeah, I did okay. Right.
Yeah, it turned out
Okay,
okay
Kyle,
for
here's
you. Oh,
one
this is
for you.
fun. Yeah. All right.
Final cut.
Yeah, don't worry too much. And so I don't know if every podcast about Pink Floyd has to have a commentary on Roger Waters and his, decidedly problematic nature, especially post Pink Floyd. But I think it bears stating that, certainly the last couple decades of him have been problematic, and there's always something new to say. And at the same time, can you separate the artist from the art and from their life? And we're going to go with sure. Final Cut is admittedly a Roger solo album, and there is a lot of emotion on this album. I think lyrically, you could argue that it is one of their best, if not their best. And at the same time, it lacks that balance, as Geoff alluded to, where it was at 99% Roger by this stage, and it was pretty much him just, it's a solo album, effectively. But it also works really well as sort of a counterpart to The Wall. And there are some really tender and highly emotional parts, and some ways in which he recorded the vocals and in effect blew out his voice. At least he blames this, I think, in part for that. And some really cool stuff and some great songs. And you're kind of left to say, where do I rank this relative to the rest of their works? For me, I tend to really resonate with the really emotional and personal. I love the story. I love just the starkness of really soft spoken and sung vocals with really cinematic music. And I like the sound effects, and they work well. So for me, this is an A tier album.
Oh.
I really like it, and I have been an apologist for this album for a long time. Sometimes I'll see this show up in D or C, and I don't understand it because, granted, I was born in 1984, so I did not live through this album. But for me, I think it's very moving. I think it's very effective. I think if you listen to it with fresh ears, I think it works really well as an album. So I can see that I've upset Roy, and I'm
I just
sorry.
think it's so high. I don't hate this album. I actually
It's
revisited
borderline
it.
A or B for me, but A.
I'd probably lean more B, but I mean, It's very slow. It's a bit of a tough listen, but there are some good strong moments. The second half of the album in particular, Fletcher Memorial Home is really good. The final cut's really good.
Gunner's Dream is
Um,
great.
um, it's very one dimensional, but it's good. It's better than people. I think at the time people were wanting another Wall, and he gave them completely the opposite. But over time, I think, and you know what? To be fair, listening to it back now again, like you brought up, it's sort of hard to like it a lot, knowing it's just him being involved. That is a bit of a struggle.
I
But
get it.
putting that aside, I think it's an okay record. I think it's better than now than it was when it came out.
Yeah. I have an issue with that album because when I listened to it, I was so excited. I was so into the Wall, and
Yeah.
I wanted to like it so much. But then all I really heard on that album was Ego, and I couldn't get by it. I was like, this guy, like, what he just like for me that like ruined everything. So I couldn't. I know that there's some good tunes on it, but when I listened to it, isn't there's just no way to get beyond that feeling. And yeah, like to me, it just came off as really dull.
Yeah.
So
I had it in as a B tier for me, and I think I think there's some brilliant David Gilmour guitar solos in it. There's two or three of the tracks that have absolutely, you know, his contribution is killer on them. I actually bought it on vinyl about sometime around last year, and discovered that they've inserted the track when the tigers broke free from the Wall movie into the middle of
mm,
the album, and it's
mm,
like, no, this does you can't just put a song into the middle of an album that's been like I've been listening to for 30 years. I was really that was like I wanted to take it back and get an old one without that on it. But yeah, I look, I think if you view it as a yeah as a Roger album, I think it's way better than a lot. It's way better than a lot of his
mm.
solo albums, and there's some good stuff in it. I also get the ego part of it as well. I would have put it somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Okay.
Fair
Well, we'll
enough.
see. I
A,
mean, I think there's some
A
other
tier is
albums
getting
there that we still.
yeah, it's getting loaded up, so you can shift around as you want.
All right,
Hmm.
Jordan, your turn. Let's see. Okay.
Ooh,
Interesting
more.
one.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is not one that I've
More.
heard a whole lot of,
Yeah.
so it's
Me
hard for me
neither.
to make a comment. I mean, you guys probably know more about it than me, but this is one from the film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can't really say I've listened to it a whole lot. Tell you the truth, doesn't mean that
First album without Sid
much to
Barrett
me.
and with David Gilmour playing, full time. That's about the only significance to it, really. I mean, Geoff, where would you put this one?
I have it in D.
Yeah, I think. I mean, are we
A
all agreed
solid
with that?
D.
Yeah, I think
It's a
so.
it's a D. It's their worst
There's not
soundtrack album for sure.
there's
Yeah.
there's not much here to really worry about. Let's
Mm,
move on.
mm.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving
Let's move.
on.
I mean, do you have anything to say about it, Geoff? I mean, I don't know. It's not my favorite.
No, I don't. I don't. To me, it's. I mean, compared to Obscured by Clouds, I think it's Obscured by Clouds is a much
Okay.
better
Whoa.
as an album. So
Metal. Okay. Um.
Man,
All
we
right.
gave all of
So
16 seconds to more.
no point. So here's the
Roy is not a
problem.
fan.
Well, here's the problem. There's two spots between S and A, and by my estimation, there's three albums that belong in S and A. One of them being this one. So, I'm gonna put Meddle in A because that's a very good record. It doesn't completely capture yet what Dark Side of the Moon was, but it's the first one that becomes that is starting to sound like what the band is going to be. Of course, it has Echoes, which is like the legendary epic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of great tunes on here. I think that it's a more thought out full record than, let's say, Atom Heart Mother or some of the other ones that are there. So It also has One of These Days, which is just an awesome, awesome opener and an amazing live song. So yeah, I'm putting it in A, which is going to force somebody to make some adjustments. I think
This is okay.
would be my guess.
Maybe. I spent so much time listening to Echoes that for me it's one of the more important Pink Floyd albums, or in this really in this case songs. I think I even played on, was it a Cleopatra? They had all these different
Tribute.
versions of things.
Oh,
Yeah, I
really?
think I played on one of the tributes to that. It's always really, really loved that song. So great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I got
So
to see it on David Gilmour's tour for On an Island, and Richard Wright and him were in the band. It was probably a few years before Richard passed away, and that was a real, hearing those two voices, brilliant. Loved,
yeah.
a real high point of any gig I've ever been at. Fantastic.
Kyle, where do you have this one then?
I have it right on the line between S and A. I think it's their fourth best album for what it's worth. It's an excellent album. The opener, Echoes, I mean, those two alone. But this is the album where they finally had the formula in theory. And
Right.
then just a couple years later, they really delivered on it. I will say in terms of album art, which I always pay a lot of attention to, this is a D tier album art. And considering it was Hypnosis and it was Storm, and even there's a great documentary on their company, and he admits that they sort of missed it on this. Does anyone know what that album cover is supposed to be?
No.
I think I read it somewhere, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's an ear. It's an ear underwater, which is to get at the echoes and the. But just you think about like all the things they could have done visually with echoes.
Which is like that.
Yeah, see, that's better. You already did a better.
Well, that's the cover. I was just looking it up. This is the cover for the Cleopatra album that I did, which if anybody's interested, it featured.
Doesn't even look like an ear.
Isn't that funny? It's I just called it up just as you said that. It features, I don't know, you guys might know who some of these people are. Frank Domino? Who's that? Frank Domino.
Is he a dentist? No.
He actually is. Well, do you guys know a guy named Dweezil Zappa? That might be more familiar.
Yeah.
We know Dweezil.
This guy, Jordan Rudess. He sounds really super familiar.
Jordan Rudess.
Rudess, yeah. I don't know.
Who's that guy?
I don't know.
All right.
Pat Mastelotto. Yeah.
There you go.
No, I know that guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Is it Geoff? No, Meddle's a great album. Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
Ooh.
Okay.
What'd you get?
Obscured by Clouds.
Oh, obscured.
Yeah, so I think I've said this before, the album that they recorded while they were recording Dark Side of the Moon, and I think it was the film producer sort of said to them, hey, could you come to, I think it was France maybe, the Honky Chateau actually, the sort of famous Chateau de Hérouville, a lot of kind of stuff's been recorded at, and they went there for like 3 or 4 weeks and made a soundtrack album, and then came back to Abbey Road to finish making Dark Side of the Moon. It's funny how you just kind of put something like that together. Comparing it to more, there's songs that I really like in this. What's the Deal? I think David Gilmour's song really good. Childhood's End, two really great David Gilmour songs. A really beautiful Rick Wright piano piece called Stay, which is just really a beautiful piece of music. There's some kind of the first couple of Obscured by Clouds and some of the instrumentals are a bit kind of they're interesting, but actually the band that Nick Mason currently has playing the pre-Dark Side Floyd stuff, they do a few songs from this, and hearing that stuff live, some of it's absolutely it works so well as live piece. Where would I put Obscured? I think, looking at the board as it is, this is an album that I would definitely take this ahead of Adam Hart Mother for me. I'll probably let me fill the gap in C tier by putting it in there.
I think that makes sense.
That's where I've got it.
Even
it's close.
It better. It would be my favorite C tier album, depending on how it plays out.
Same.
Yeah, I could relate to that. I listened this album. I think just really, really flows, and the songs are really nice. It's almost undeniable the way it just kind of, just
Yeah.
the feel good album. It has a certain pace. It's Floyd in that certain, in that mode of just playing mellow, spacey songs that are kind of easy to listen to with some extra little bits thrown in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it
I think
works. I think that's a
it's a
good,
C bordering on B kind of
good
album.
C tier record. Yep, filling it in there. Okay.
I agree.
And whose turn is this now?
Oh, I don't know that I want the wild card. That's a lot of pressure. I don't know that I would change anything at this stage. I want to
Well,
pick an album.
you can.
Oh, well.
Oops. Sorry.
Okay.
Disregard that last one.
So explain to me what I get to do with the wild card.
You can
Move
move
one
something.
album to any level.
Honestly, everything is ranked where I would put it except for Division Bell, and so I feel rude changing it, but I've got to do something. I can't just do nothing. So I guess I'll take Division Bell from A to B. I think it's probably more appropriately B, and I think that'll open up some space in the hope
Well,
that Final
That's
Cut
fine.
stays
We can
in
see.
A.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
know?
I mean that's fine for now. There's still movement that can happen, and yeah. Okay, yeah. Sorry you didn't get another album, but
It's okay. Yeah,
Well,
not super exciting, but it's all right.
yeah.
We can talk. We can go back and talk about some more.
Okay, disregard that.
One more.
All
We can
right.
talk about the
we got
Nile
my
song
turn.
and Cymbeline or whatever.
We need to do something instead of wild card where if you get that you have to sing a song or something more ridiculous.
Okay.
Animal.
Okay. Well, this is an important one, Jordan. Here you go. Animals.
Yeah, where do you
Well,
put this?
this one is
Where
one
you
of my.
put-
This one is definitely one of my favorites, so it's hard not to rate it in the top category, in the top tier. So I would have to do that. It's gonna get crowded. I feel, but hey.
So remember, there's a limit to 3 in each row. So you have to decide
Oh, the
if
limit of 3 in each row. Aha. Oh, then I can't put it in the top because there's other ones that I like better. So we'll have to put it. We'll have to put it in the A
in the A. Okay.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll put it
Yeah,
up here. In the
it's a
front.
great album. I think it's so tight conceptually. It just makes so much sense, and it's such a good ride to listen
Yeah.
to. Just there's nothing boring about it. It just kind of takes you on this journey. It's a solid pathway. It's easy to
It's a
it's
great,
easy
great album.
it's
Yeah.
easy to go with. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time. I think this is another one that I think I play. Cleopatra, I think at one point kept me very busy with this stuff, and so I think I did a remake of a bit of this album as well. So it's kind of very close to home.
But this album
for
cover
me-
is just fine. It's a good album cover. So
Oh, that's a great album cover.
Yeah,
It's iconic.
yeah, it's
but
good. Really cool.
for me, you know what? I really, really like this album, and I'm gonna say something sort of sacrilege, but
oh boy.
I recognize Dark Side of the Moon's importance and its brilliance, and I love that album.
Yeah.
But I enjoy at this point in my life listening to Animals more than Dark Side of the Moon. I just do.
Okay, I got to go. No.
Yeah. No.
I'm not
That's
saying
it.
I'd rank it higher. I like it. I'm just sick
cool.
of Dark Side of the Moon by no fault other than hearing it.
I
bazillion
just heard
times.
it. I just heard it when I was up at MIT like 3 weeks ago, because one of the guys there has a full on kind of like, what was it, 48 speaker array, and he played that album for everybody. It was a great way to revisit
Which one?
it. So,
Animals or Dark Side? Which one?
Dark Side of the Moon.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah, I
fun.
mean that's a whole different experience.
Yeah,
but
of
yeah.
course, of course. Yeah,
Come
it
on,
was great.
Roy. I'm lower on Dogs than I think most people. I feel like my understanding of the history is that when it came out, it was somewhat of a disappointment. It depends on who you talk to, right? But it seems like it's had this ascendance of the last 5-10 years in how it's viewed. I find it's a great album. It's a top 5 album of Pink Floyd. This is not saying that it's not good, but for me, it's in that 5th slot. I think Meddle is better, and I think the top 3 are clearly cemented as far as I'm concerned. I don't attach to it or connect to it as well as some of those other ones. Again, we're speaking with,
Man,
Yeah, right.
Dogs is so good. I can't understand not it. To me, it's like a top 3 song.
but
by them.
nothing on Dogs moves me like Echoes does. I think you have to
Wow,
kind of
yeah.
put those in the ring together, and I think Meddle wins out overall.
Mm,
I don't know. Now the album
I-
covers.
That's
I'm with you.
amazing to me.
yeah.
I love the story about the pig and how it got loose.
That
and they had a
dual
guy to
guitar
shoot
solo
it.
that during that comes in on that break, and it's man. That's just great stuff.
Geoff, how would you rank between those two? Just curiosity.
Between-
Animals versus Meddle.
I would put Animals ahead of Meddle. Yeah, for me, I think it's to me it's a what could you do after Wish You Were Here? You have to go somewhere different, and I think they really did with that album, and I think probably it's them. Remember, round about this time, Nick Mason's, producing The Damned. Nick Mason's producing like punk rock bands in the UK, and they're taking a bit of what's happening in music and trying to kind of bring that edginess, which was kind of what, that sort of rougher sound was always part of what they did. And I think they really just nail it. But Roie took the harmony guitars, the melodic stuff, it's pretty much the last sort of significant contribution of Richard Wright as well, in terms of the writing and the creativity of it, because he's, I think, pretty much on the wall. Anything he's doing is pretty much to order from Roger, if he's there at all. So to me, it's the last kind of grasp of the Four Police Floyd that kind of, sorry for repeating my talking about, but it's the journey, right the way through. And I think the dial went to another space after Animals. So to me, it's kind of a bit of
them still being a band at that time. Like, yeah,
yeah.
fair. Yeah.
And it's hard for a band to, to choose like what to do, because you either completely say, okay, we did that, and then you do something totally different, or you kind of stay on the same path because that that's your audience, and it's a safe zone. So Animals was an album that, for Pink Floyd, that turned, I think, like just enough. It was very different than anything else, but it was definitely different, but it kept that trippy, spacey coolness that Floyd always had. And I think that's what, one of the things that makes it as special as it is.
Yeah.
Yep. So Kyle's
Again.
wrong, basically.
No, I'm not wrong. Top 5 album from one of my favorite bands of all time. Where you might rank it 4th, I rank it 5th. So, Oh my God.
is this me?
Do I get to do anything interesting? Wait. Oh no, this is you, Roie. Okay, I thought it was me.
This is me. Well, I mean,
Dark Side.
This album sucks.
D.
Yeah, really.
Dark Side of the Moon,
dark.
straight D album. I mean, there's not much to say. It goes in the first space here, and it's S tier all the way. One of the best albums of all time. Influential in every way. Still sells records today. Yada yada yada. Whatever else has been said. I mean,
and if you're bored with it, just listen to it backwards, right? It's pretty cool.
I've never done the Wizard of Oz thing. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah, there's always room for more experimentation with it.
No, it's amazing. I mean, it is. It's a flawless, brilliant record. So, everybody else gives them.
In a bid to say something interesting, I referred earlier on to listening to two of my friends who do a radio show, and they were talking about this album, and my friend Steven's a real fact troller. So this is a brilliant story, I think, and as a interesting as a band member, I guess, Jordan, of someone who's producing a new album, right? Mm-hmm. So here, let's talk timeline. November 1971, Pink Floyd put out Meddle. Okay. They have a UK tour scheduled for January, 20th of January, 1972. So just less than 3 months after the album. This band's history is we road test our material. So we're going on tour. We need some new material. So they start to pull stuff together that they have. And on the 20th of January, the first 40 minutes of the show, less than 3 months after Meddle comes out, is Dark Side of the Moon.
Wow.
Breathe, On the Run, Time, a version of Great Gig in the Sky, Money, Us and Them, Any Color You Like, Brain Damage. That's the first 40 minutes of the show.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
Like, what? And like, that album didn't get, it wasn't released. I think it's maybe like mid 73. They made Obscured by Clouds in between. They recorded it. And I mean, some of that stuff's around in YouTube and stuff like that. And you can hear kind of them working out on, some of the songs don't quite have the lyrics. They're not quite the same. But cool. Just, I mean, imagine being able to do, imagine being able to do that, and we know why, because people will have bootlegged it and all that kind of stuff. But it just shows what a different time it was, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's so like brave and and
Yeah,
different to
yeah,
do that, right? What
sure.
must people have thought
Amazing.
of it in the audience then? Did they love it or did they think, what the hell am I listening
Well,
to?
that
Like,
because the rest of they played the rest of the set is One of These Days from Meddle, Set the Controls from the Heart of the Sun, Echoes, and A Saucer Full of Secrets, and you're done.
yeah,
But then they,
yeah,
you see,
Well,
and then when they released Dark Side of the Moon,
yeah.
that tour they did Shine On and Dogs and Sheep from Animals because
Okay.
they had those worked up, and that
Yeah,
kind of formed the rest of their music right the way through.
right,
But I mean, it
right.
must be
amazing.
really interesting to have music that you play to an audience and go, right, they didn't like that bit was too long, let's shorten that.
Yeah,
Being able to
right,
have
right.
that
Well,
creativity.
compared to Genesis playing the entire Lamb Lies Down on Broadway with nobody having heard it, um,
Isn't that crazy? Would never happen today.
No,
Hey, I want
no.
to make a quick plug in relation to
Well,
this. It'll be quick, but Geoff sent me a copy of a book called Solid State, and it's on about the specific solid state recording console at EMI that famously was introduced to keep the Beatles happy when they recorded Abbey Road.
mm,
And then Alan Parsons was a sound engineer on that project, and also ended up being a sound engineer on this project. So two of my top 5 albums of all time, and 2 of my top 5 album covers of all time, incidentally, both recorded on the same or the recording console at Abbey Road or EMI.
mm.
And there's a book about it, and it's really fascinating, I think. So it's called
even
Solid
this
State.
album cover. I mean, is there a more
This is the best one ever.
iconic album
Yeah,
cover than
right,
this
right.
by
No,
anybody?
yeah.
No, it's perfect in every
Um,
way.
All right. So, Geoff. Okay.
Oh, it's
Let's
me.
see.
No, this is interesting.
Oh, that is an interesting one. I'm gonna get Endless River. I just know it, but go ahead.
All right. Momentary Lapse of Reason.
So
I like this. I like this album.
so I'll tell you, we this was I started to listen to Pink Floyd in about 1985. And so this was the first new Pink Floyd album that came out whenever I was into the band, right? And
Mm,
I knew a little bit about, before the internet, you didn't know the history. I didn't really know the whole story. It was just an album that was coming out, and one of the guys has left. And at the time, like, I played this album to death. I absolutely loved this album. I totally ate it up. And a lot's been said about it. David Gilmour solo album by another name. There's a lot of session players. Well, hey, there's a lot of session players on the final cut. There's a lot of session players on the wall. um, you know, and then the whole thing was, and then you get this view of, suddenly it's, it's very 80s sounding, and they did the thing where they replaced the drums and stuff. I don't really like that version.
No.
No.
Because it kind of messes with my memories. It's a bit like sticking the extra track into the final cut. So, I mean, for me, I would probably listen to this album more often than I would listen to the final cut. So for me, it's a decision between A and C. But what I'm going to do is, sorry, A and B. I'm going to put it in B, and for me, I need to drop Adam Hart Mother down to C to make room for that. So for me, it's a B album with
Yeah.
relegating Adam Hart Mother.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think it's better than Adam Hart Mother. I think Division Bell's better. That's why I had Division Bell in A. But I think, look, I mean, I was 12 when this came out. I got to see the tour at a stadium, and I still have really strong memories of that. It was in the pouring rain, and they had a bed tied up to the lights, and during On the Run with the bed movie, and then the bed came down and exploded on the stage. And you don't forget stuff
wow.
like that from when you're 12. It's just, amazing to remember. And some of the songs I find a little annoying now than I did back then, but I still like a lot of this album. And Sorrow is still one of my all-time favorite songs by them. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I love the live version of Learning to Fly that came on A Delicate Sound of Thunder a lot. I think it works really well, and I like that version better. One Slip is still a really good song. Terminal Frost is an amazing instrumental. So yeah, I think it's good. It's dated. It has the '80s sound, all of that. But it's a
And I
decent
don't
record.
mind that sound. Like I like the way that the snare sounds. Like whether it's like verb heavy, gated, whatever. Like
Yeah,
they ruined it with that remastered that Geoff alluded to, because then it just takes out all the power of the snare and it feels empty. And I don't like decisions like that. That makes no sense to me. But I digress. To me, this album just feels a little bit bordering on cheesy, and it's just a little boring and dull to me. But I mean, obviously, there's some really standout songs. I have this as a C tier album. It's not as good as Division Bell. I find more interest in like Atom Heart Mother in particular. And I do, admittedly, I'm a Waters guy, not a Gilmour guy. So this feels like the worst of Gilmour's works as a solo album. But it's not a bad album. I can listen to it. I might fall asleep halfway through.
I think as a
So
Gilmour solo album, it's his best solo album, really.
sure, yeah, that's saying a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
pleased. I was pleased when this album came out because I was kind of like wondering what was going to happen with Pink Floyd, and losing a little bit of faith in what they could do. And I feel like David Gilmour, he's just so musical, and his spirit is so. I don't know. I just like him as a musician and as a person, and I think it really came through. And I think he kind of understood a lot about what the magic is, what people like about Pink Floyd, and was able to capture some of that. Not as well as the ones the albums we have on the
Yeah.
the top or the A, but I think it's a really good album and some really good songs. And if I hear it, if I go back to it, I'm like, this is cool. It's good stuff.
You know what? I think what he did with it was, and I don't know if it was by any intent or anything, but he brought some light back into it. You know,
Right.
everything
I
was so
agree.
dark. We had the
Well,
wall, which is great, but dark, and then Final Cut is even more. And then this was just like, let's just make a record with some songs. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
this is the
Yeah.
story of the band. I mean, that is the key creative,
No,
nexus of
but
the band is Roger
it was
and
very,
David.
it was,
Yeah.
yes. And so, yeah.
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 The
Anyway,
one thing
It's
Jordan was talking about covers. The one thing I suggest you do, on the Turning Away, Richie Havens, the
oh yeah.
Freedom guy from Woodstock. He did a version of that. I saw Richie Havens playing live in a really
really.
small club.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant I mean, he's an
Oh, it's
incredible
great.
singer.
Yeah.
Check out
Yeah.
his
Huh.
version on the Turning Away, because you
I'll do
suddenly
that.
hear this thing shorn of the production, and you go, and realize what a brilliant kind
Yeah.
of sort of folk kind of song it
Mm.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's a
check
nice
that out.
song. That's a really good song. I'm just looking at the list of songs, and I have to say I really do like a lot of the songs on this album.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
the ones that I don't like, it's kind of like like what's that? Like, but there's some really good
yeah.
tracks,
Yeah.
no doubt.
The Dogs of War is kind of, I can skip over that one.
All right, please give me Pipers. Don't give me Endless River. Hey.
There you go. Jordan. Sorry,
Oh.
Jordan. All right. Piper at the
Yeah.
Gates of Dawn. The first
Yeah.
record.
I wanted this album because I wanted to talk about how much I dislike it. This is an album, I'll just be honest. I think there's something to say about being alive when an album comes out. So this is 67. And I cannot help, as someone who was born in 1984, compare this to other albums that were coming out at the same time from bands that I love. And so it's unfair to do so. But let's put it next to Sgt. Pepper's, okay?
Right.
It just does not hold up from sort of a technical level, like the way in which it was recorded, how it sounds to me today. From a songwriting level, it doesn't hold up. And so there's a certain, like, I admit I'm ignorant of what it must have felt like when it came out, or kind of what is it speaking into. And even like The Who, another band that I love from the same era, I feel sort of similarly about their albums, where they really hit their stride, for me at least, into the 70s. And some of their earlier works, it just doesn't still connect with me as well. I think it has a clear, excellent song in Astronomy. I think that song's great, Domine, which Geoff actually ranked on the top Pink Floyd songs of all time. I don't know if you remember that. But for me, the rest of it sort of devolves into I can hardly listen to it. It's that sort of psychedelic, experimental. I just don't dig it. It's an almost D tier album to me, and I'm sorry, Geoff, I'm offending you, but I will put it at the very end of C. That's where I see it. I don't feel the need to respect it on the level that I feel like it's often respected. I've seen it as high as B or even A tier. I don't comprehend it.
Yeah, I've seen it ranked in like the top 3 or 4 records on some lists, and I agree with you. I mean, I think it's just of its time, but you're saying maybe it's not even as good as of its time, but
it's
just
a step down.
band.
Like,
It's a different
gives
band.
it a 9.5. Pitchfork gives it a 9.4. I don't understand. So
it's just a different band. It's a different approach to their songwriting. They had no idea yet that what they were going to end up becoming. So I don't know how you can really compare it to anything else they did, really.
And here's where Geoff says it's actually an A tier album.
No, I have it in C as well. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think, I mean, I do kind of view it as it's a completely different thing, right? But again, it's, you know, as we've said this before, but a lot of great bands didn't have great debut albums. And this is not a terrible album, but I agree with you. I don't sort of see it as revered as many people revere it. But I quite enjoy listening to it. So
Somebody
Someone's at the front door. With a different opinion.
Yeah. So Rolling Stone gives it 5 stars out of 5. Q gives it 5 stars out of 5. NME 9 out of 10.
Of course, still that would be the rankings they give this.
I don't get it. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I love the band. I don't get it. I don't hear it.
Yeah.
Jordan, where are you on this one? Well, I like the album. I think that there was a definite spark there for me. There was some magic. It was trippy. It was kind of quirky. And of course, the Syd Barrett thing, it's hard to say where it would have gone if he would have, kept the LSD out of his tea or whatever the hell he was doing. But yeah, I think there's something to it. Of course, it's the first album. It was a little weird. But you got to look at it with a kind of a sense of wonder and say, wow, that's a really interesting start. They were opening up some interesting avenues of musical exploration. And for that, I definitely like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and finish the last one here. We do a ceremonial last spin.
How appropriate.
It is appropriate that it's the last one.
And that it didn't even land anywhere near it.
just like the album.
Right.
It's an endless river. I like this album cover, though. It's beautiful. Endless
it's
river.
great. It's touching.
I mean, are you cool just putting it straight in the opening D slot? I think that's a good fit there.
I think I would have to. I tried to listen to this album because it's the keyboard player's stuff, and it was nice that David Gilmour kind of went back and I guess tried to resurrect some of the things and redo it, and so I listened a bit and I said, oh, it's this is pleasant, nice, and then kind of got to turn it off because it gets a little boring. So I don't think I've ever really made it all the way through. Maybe I can go back to it and listen to the part I never made it to.
What's the one song on it at the end is a pretty good song. I forget
one
what it's called.
Song. Well, I don't remember what it's called. Maybe that's...
You never made it up. Never made it up for. I think. I mean, to me, I would. So I would listen to it. I mean, I would listen to this ahead of Ummagumma and more. I mean, to me, it would be the other end of that. Someone recently made there was a playlist I found on Spotify where they'd taken bits of this album and bits of, Is This the Life You Really Wanted, the last Roger Waters album, and they kind of put them into a playlist, which was like a 45 minutes, if Pink Floyd were together today type album. And it kind of, there were lots of bits of it that kind of fitted quite well together. I mean, if you take this album for what it is, which is, we tried to put some of the leftovers together as a bit of a tribute. I think it does a good enough job. I don't think to me, like more, it's not, a canon kind of album, right? It's a nice afterthought, and
Yes.
they're not trying to do Dark Side of the Moon 2 here.
Well, it's better than Roger's Dark Side of the Moon too.
Yeah.
The
what's
revisited
that?
thing was unlistenable. So if we could have like a Z tier, we could put that there.
Yeah. I think I think this works out. I might argue either Saucerful or Division Bell above Final Cut, but no real big issue there. I mean, the rest of this sort of looks right on the mark for me.
It's very similar to my ranking. I mean, Adam Hart Mother is a little low for me, and I know Final Cut's too high for you guys, but
Yeah, it is a little
pretty
high
reasonable.
for me. Yeah, and I feel sad about Ummagumma because I do love Grantchester Meadows so much, but one song doesn't. I guess one song doesn't.
Why don't we
do
take
it for an album.
Ummagumma and move it to the top spot in
To the
D?
top
I think
of
it's
D.
better than it. Yeah, see, for Jordan.
Yeah, I think so. And well, how are you guys with "Wish You Were Here" versus "The Wall" on here? What would be second or third for you guys? Because for me, "The Wall" is second.
Yes,
me too.
same for me.
Me too, definitely.
I'm happy with what it is there, but
and because I almost played on
splitting
it.
hairs.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it's the snare drum that really puts it right over the top.
If I would have played a snare drum, it would have been in number one.
Who's to say you're not? Who's to say you're not on that track? I think is the better question.
There you go. Maybe they use.
Past royalties. They owe you some money.
Whenever they're all,
tell him he's not on it.
Whenever they're all dead and they do the mega 18 disc box set, you might be on it, Jordan.
The Jordan Rudess snare drum version.
How many versions of a Dark Side of the Moon have been released at this point, Geoff? Do you know how many anniversary versions?
Too many. Well, now you can just stick a different vinyl color out, and that becomes a thing that people buy. It's incredible cash cow, but
yeah. Cool. Well, Jordan, thanks for joining us, man. I'm glad we finally got to do this and spend some time with you and rank these albums. I think this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, guys. It was a pleasure.
Yep. And we hope, if you guys stuck around and watched the whole thing, don't forget Jordan's new solo album, Permission to Fly, is out on September 6th. There's a couple of tracks out now. A really cool, long, proggy one called The Alchemist is out now. It's an amazing track. Yeah. And the killer album, which I think everybody will dig. And, of course, the new Dream Theater stuff will happen at some point. I'm sure there's more news coming there, and the tour kicks off in October. So, you're a busy guy, man. Lots going on. It's super excited.
Lots to do. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you all.
All right. We'll see you guys. See you later.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for checking out the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all our socials and progreport.com. And we'll see you all again real soon. Thanks.